Hello beautiful people, it's Mai here from Nintendo Life, and today we're reviewing Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green on the Nintendo Switch and Switch 2. This review was originally written by the lovely Lau Bell and made into a video by yours truly. Now without further ado, let's get stuck in. Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green is a difficult game to evaluate. Re-released on the Nintendo Switch eShop to celebrate Pokemon's 30th anniversary, this 22-year-old Game Boy Advance remake of the original Pokemon Red and Blue feels like a lackluster way to celebrate one of the largest media franchises known to man. On the other hand, we're just happy to have a more convenient way to experience this nostalgic romp through Kanto again, catching personal favourites like Cubone along the way. Making matters more difficult, Fire Red and Leaf Green came as a separate purchase, $19.99 USD or £16.99, rather than part of the GBA Nintendo Classics emulator, which adds suspend saves and filters to many classic titles which are free for NSO expansion pack subscribers. Some have speculated that Fire Red and Leaf Green are not part of this because Pokemon Home functionality is coming, allowing you to transfer your Pidgeys and Mr. Mimes into other games. If suspend points were possible though, it'd be easy to catch them all, breaking part of what makes this classic title so special and threatening the larger Pokemon ecosystem by we don't know, farming Master Balls and shiny Eevees? Regardless, it makes sense that Fire Red and Leaf Green were chosen to celebrate 30 years of Pokemon. We've visited Kanto many times before, but Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee adopted a Pokemon Go style catching mechanic and reworked the story into something more modern, while the original Red and Blue have bugs, confusing design choices, and a plotting pace that only the most nostalgia-hungry trainers can withstand. Fire Red and Leaf Green sit happily in the middle of the other Kanto quests. They retain many of the original classic mechanics while working out kinks like the infamous glitch that saw psychic types immune to ghost types, among many, many more egregious issues. What's more, they included late and post-game areas with the Sevi Islands that include some Generation 2 and 3 Pokemon. The final area of these islands also include the Trainer Tower, which features a bunch of different battle challenges to put your team to the test as a true post-game experience. All that is here in the Switch re-release, plus access to Birth and Naval Island, home to the legendaries Ho-Oh, Lugia and Deoxys. These were only accessible via real-world events before, so this all comes together to make this more or less the definitive edition. If you don't care about completing the National Pokédex, that is. Currently, it appears you won't be able to catch them all from other regions because you had to trade from other games, specifically Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald, in the original 2004 release, and that simply isn't possible at the moment. Regardless, we consider this version definitive for a different reason. Playing on your large monitor or handheld on Switch 2 is far superior to the GBA's tiny screen or the backwards compatible DS. Stomping Brock and Misty with Bulbasaur, or in my case Squirtle, has never been so easy to see. Here, the sprites are crisp despite the upscaling, and we enjoyed looking more closely at some finer details on these simple yet iconic Pokemon sprites. Fire Red and Leaf Green still could have looked much better. Many have already decried the black bars that frame and shrink the screen to better match the original aspect ratio. After the first hour or two, this stopped bothering us, but we do understand where people are coming from when they cite this as proof that this re-release is lazier than a drowsy slowpoke. If expanding the field of view wasn't feasible, they could have at least added some cutesy frames to toggle between. A lack of online functionality is also a bummer. Trades are local only, so if you want to evolve your Haunter into a Gengar, you're out of luck. Because what millennial that grew up with Pokemon has friends that live nearby nowadays? While the black borders didn't bother us, the lack of new features did. We would have loved to see Game Freak add some kind of challenge or remix to the game, such as reworked Pokemon spawns or NPC trainers with full competitive teams, rather than two Kakuna that only use Harden. A master quest, if you will. This would have gone a long way toward making the price point more digestible. That said, playing through Leaf Green again has given us a fresh perspective on how far modern Pokemon games have come. We have been highly critical of the more recent entries, but going back in time to the GBA version of Kanto reminded us with newfound appreciation for the mechanics in the modern titles, as well as for how things used to be. You see, Fire Red and Leaf Green were released before the physical and special move split, meaning dark type attacks like Bite are all special moves, while Shadow Ball is a physical move because that's what all ghost type moves nonsensically are. This creates fun little build challenges for certain Pokemon, such as Flareon, that has a higher physical attack stat than special. It's not as easy as slapping Flare Blitz on it and calling it a day. Instead, we had to grind the slot machines in the Rocket Game Corner, not for Dratini or Porygon, but rather a Shadow Ball TM that turned our Flareon into a psychic ghost-deleting menace. Here, there's no way to sneak up on Pokemon and backstrike them with a Pokeball for a higher chance of capture. No alpha or over-leveled Pokemon roam wide open spaces or are visible in the map. You can't send Pokemon out to auto battle, collecting craft items as they amass experience. You can't freely learn and remember moves at any time or even withdraw Pokemon whenever you want. And the 151 original Pokemon make the adventure feel cramped compared to the 400 plus available in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We mean none of this as a negative though. It's charming to go back to something so simple and concise as the series continued to explore new mechanics, and it's a great way to remember 30 years of Pokemon. What's more, our time with Leaf Green allowed us to appreciate how the series has evolved as a whole because, to be honest, we wouldn't want a new Pokemon game in this classic linear style. For that, we now have easy access to Fire Red and Leaf Green. HMs still suck as much as a bug catcher's Caterpie though. All told, this Fire Red and Leaf Green re-release is undoubtedly a lazy way to celebrate 30 years of Pokemon. For the asking price, Game Freak and the Pokemon Company could have included some extra goodies like a hard mode or online functionality. Still, this is the most convenient way to experience the charm of the original Kanto adventure, and going back in time to see how much the Pokemon series has grown gave us a newfound appreciation for all the catching we've done over 3 decades, and all that there is to come. Now give us Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, please! We here at Nintendo Life give Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green a 7 out of 10. Now it's time for my thoughts. I grew up with Pokemon right from the very beginning, started with Blue. So when I picked up Fire Red a few years ago, it was a bit of a nice refreshment in a way, seeing new features that I wasn't able to experience in the original games. For this review, I played through Leaf Green purely because I wanted to see what the other side was like, and also because I wanted to get my baby Marill as part of my party, and I'm not disappointed. The one thing I am kind of disappointed about is being unable to actually trade with my friends. If I had some friends who had Pokemon Fire Red, I wouldn't be able to trade my Sandshrew for a Pokemon that's unavailable in Leaf Green. It's one of the things that on the playground that I always really enjoyed about Pokemon. Even if I wasn't going to keep the Pokemon that we had traded, I would just quickly trade it back and at least my Pokedex would be filled. Whereas this time round, I'm going to have so many gaps and it's going to be, it's just going to be so annoying. I'm one of the hopeful people that wishes that Pokemon Home functionality will appear. Part of me feels like it won't happen. At least not until there's maybe like a Ruby Sapphire or Emerald comes out to the Switch 2. And I have to agree with Lowell in this review that, yes, £16.99, $20 rounding up, it doesn't seem like too much for a Pokemon game, but it would be the right price if it had all the features that it originally had. Saying that they have all the events that are coming in. So I'll be able to get Lugia on my party, which I am so looking forward to. Lugia is my favourite legendary burb. But saying that, it was really, really nice to get back into a classic Pokemon game again. It got to points where my other half had to tell me to get off the game when I was capturing footage for this video, because it would get to a point where it was dinner time and I just completely lost track. It reminded me of when I was a child sitting in the back of the car on like road trips with my parents and my sister. I'd be in the back of the car with my Game Boy Color. I'd have the wee light on and the wee magnifier and everything. I was one of those kind of people, and I'd just be trying to catch Pokemon in some sort of like glimpse of lights in the back seat. I managed to recapture that childhood nostalgia with Leaf Green. even though I never played Leaf Green as a child. It felt very cozy and safe for me. I still have played a lot of the new Pokemon games, so I am definitely familiar with the new features, but it was something like going back to a simpler time with the Pokemon games, which also wasn't that simple because my goodness, the amount of grinding we had to do back then, which explains a lot with how I am with games. I do like to grind in games. There was definitely something that filled me with comfort. I felt like I knew what I was doing in this game because I had played Pokemon Blue 60 plus hours at least 7 or 8 times. So very, very familiar with this region. Another thing as well, I know that the secondhand market for Pokemon games are incredibly expensive. So if it means that people can experience the older games without forking out a few £100 or close to £100 or however much it is now on the secondhand market, they can do it at a fraction of the price. Granted, you will be missing some of the features, but again, if you don't have any friends who have the money to go and buy a really expensive physical cart of the games just so you can trade Pokemon, then I personally think this is the way to go. Again, I still am very disgruntled that they charge that much without having the online functionality, but I've just got to hope that any future classic Pokemon games they release, there is a way for us to trade Pokemon, or at least a way to appease the millennials like myself. I'm just hoping that they do it in a way that isn't just nostalgia bait. It was also really nice being able to choose my original starter I had in Pokemon Blue. I had a Squirtle, I named him Sash, all in caps with an exclamation point, so I felt it was only right to do that. Plus, Squirtle's the best boy, then it's Bulbasaur, and then sorry, Charmander.